Hello, this is a tutorial on how to recover lost passwords for Linux users. So this is a Linux operating system. We don't exactly know the name of the Linux user that we want to use. We don't know the password of any of the users in here, neither root nor this user here, administrator. We might try to enter some password, but of course this will not work. The operating system is Ubuntu 24.04, but similar technologies such as the bootloader GRUB and the Linux kernel GNU Linux operating system is going to be applicable for a variety of desktop GNU Linux operating systems. This is a virtual machine, which makes it easier for me to just reboot and try to enter into the bootloader GRUB. Let's reboot the machine and see if we actually are presented with the GRUB boot menu. So it's extremely fast, doesn't stay now not even 1 second in the GNU GRUB bootloader menu, which is where we want to go because we want to edit the password of the Linux user account, not by booting into a USB stick, but by getting to the GNU GRUB boot menu and then from there on booting in single user mode straight into the user root without having being asked the password of the user root. Okay, let's try to press the escape key while it's booting. So this did the trick. GNU GRUB appeared, so when the computer rebooted, I have pressed the escape key a ton of times. In this case, we are using BIOS, not UEFI. What I want to do here is to get the default command line for booting Ubuntu, which is this option, the first one, the default one. And then we go E to edit the commands. We are presented with this block similar to, I don't know, a YAML file or something. The command line is the penultimate line, the line that starts with Linux. So Linux is the kernel. Then it says which file it should boot from, so /boot and then the VM Linux, so the compressed kernel. Then it says that it will boot on this disk or on this partition with this UUID globally unique ID. So these are the 4 GNU GRUB Linux command line parameters that we're going to remove. So RO becomes read write. White splash VD handoff, we don't need them anymore. They're just fancy. In this case, we are not going to need those. We are editing the command line just for this reboot. We're not writing anything interesting to the disk. If we just reboot the machine, all of the changes that we do now will be lost. So this is a very special boot, once in a lifetime. We want to boot with /partition being mounted read write because we want to write to the /etc/etc directory where the passwords of the Linux users reside. And we want to not boot in the default way, which is using systemd. We want to boot straight into a Unix shell. So we say that init equals /bin/sh. So again, this read write means that /partition will be mounted read write. And then we're not going to use the normal PID1. We're going to use /bin/sh as the PID1, the most important process, the only user space user mode process. Okay, and now we press Ctrl X to boot. Boot is really fast. It has finished booting. We have been sh, which is probably dash in the Debian family of Linux operating systems. Let's see if bash exists. Yes. For a bit of better ergonomics, bash versus dash. Some things will work, some things will not work. First of all, let's see who am I. So I'm the user root. The user root by default does not have any password because I have installed Ubuntu 24.04 using the default installer steps, which creates the user root but without a known password. So I cannot just switch to the user root because I do not know its password. But I can do this workaround in the bash, in the GNU GRUB boot menu. I say that this time the system should start with the init set as /bin/sh. I'm the user root, which can do anything on this machine. The next hurdle is to make sure that slash directory and partition is actually mounted read-write, which we can see it is. So slash says that slash directory is from this partition with this partition type, file system type, and it's mounted read-write, which is great. Let's look at the list of users on the current machine and decide which of the users we actually want to use. So that would be, let's use nano if available. Auto-completion works because we're in bash, so nano etc password /etc/passwd. All of these users are built-in, created by the installer, each and every one of them. Only the last one is the user that we actually provide in the Ubuntu 24.04 installer. In the installer wizard, we specify that a new Linux user should be created, and this is the name that we have provided, which is administrator. The Linux user with user ID 1000. Let's change the password of this user, Ctrl X to exit. Where the passwords reside, the passwords don't reside anywhere. The password has been hashed, and then the hash is kept into a special file, which is the shadow file, which is this one. And the hash of the password is probably this part after the first column for the row where it says administrator, so for the final row. We're not going to actually hand edit this file because we have a full Unix userland with a ton of commands. We have 2000 executables available at our disposal, and that's why we're going to actually use the normal executable that you would use at the Linux command line in order to change the password of a Linux user, which is passwd. It's available, we're going to use it. Okay, so it says passwd, and then we want to provide the login, which is the username. Okay, let's put a new password, QWE. Okay, and now we can reboot. If this were a physical computer, a hardware computer, I would reboot from the button, the hardware button. because it's a virtual machine, I can reboot from here. Let's go force reset. And this time we don't need to do anything special. We're just going to let the Linux operating system boot as per default. We have changed the Linux file system in just one way, just the partition / in just the file /etc/ shadow. And in there, only on the last line, we have changed the hash of the password for the Linux user administrator. QWE. And that's it. We managed to boot into the desktop environment. So this was it. This was how, if you forgot your password, if you need to recover a password, or if you have a random computer and you don't even know the name of the Linux user, how you can set a password to it. This is an emergency mechanism when you have physical access to the Linux hardware computer, or if it's a virtual machine, to the virtualization software. Thank you.